Good morning everyone, this is Charlie Metzena and welcome to my first ever vlog. For today we will be talking about the Middle East Asian literature. And so without further ado, let's get into the video. Literature of Saudi Arabia. So to give you a background, although there was no Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the 18th century, we'll start our exploration of Saudi literature before the Wahhabi movement. To this end, there's Arabian satire poetry from 18th century by Hamadan al-Shuair, a master of satire known for his ribald humor, self-deprecation, and invective verse. Hamadan was acerbic in his criticism of society and its morals, which he voiced in a poetic idiom widely referred to as Nabati. Here, a mix of Najdi, vernacular and vocabulary, and images dating back to the origins of Arabic poetry. Here are the sample and famous author literature of Saudi Arabia. Abdul Rahman Munif, one of the famous significant Arab writers of the last century. His Cities of Salt quintet was chosen by novelist Sinan Anton as one of the 5 books you should read before you die. Feminist Lit Mag, a feminist literary movement that published written work exclusively by Saudi women, as well as accompanying artwork created by regional artists. They bring out work both in English and Arabic. Thus far, each issue has centered on a theme that is an element of Saudi culture. Literature of Iraq. Iraq literature is and has been deeply marked by Iraq's political history. In the late 1970s, a period of economic upturn, prominent writers in Iraq were provided with an apartment and car by Saddam's government. In exchange, literature was expected to express and galvanize support for the ruling Ba'ath Party. From the late 1980s onwards, Iraq exile literature developed with writers whose rejection of dominant ideology and resistance to wars in Iraq compelled them to formulate a brutally raw realism, characterized by a shocking sense of modernity. Late 20th century, Iraq literature has been marked by writers such as Saadafi Youssef, Fadil al-Azawi. Saadafi Youssef is considered one of the most important contemporary poets in the Arab world. He was born near Basra, Iraq. Following his experience as a political prisoner in Iraq, he has spent most of his life in exile, working as a journalist and activist throughout North Africa and the Middle East. He is the author of over 30 books of poetry, including Nostalgia, My Enemy, translated by Sinan Anton and Peter Money, 2012. Without an Alphabet, Without a Face, Selected Poems, translated by Khaled Matawa, and 51 Poems, 1958. Next, we have Fadil al-Azawi, prolific Iraq poet and novelist. Fadil is a member of the influential Kirkuk group of poets and writers, which had an important impact on the development of Iraq literature and culture in the last 3 decades of the 20th century. Famous for his book Axis of Evil, Azawi grew up in Kirkuk but moved in Baghdad to study and later work as journalist and editor. He became famous in the 1960s for his poetry, which was radical in form and content, and was imprisoned twice for political reasons. He left Iraq in 1977 and has since lived in exile in Berlin. Next, we have Literature of Iran. Iran's earliest surviving literary traditions are that of Avestan, the Iranic sacred language of the Avesta, whose earliest literature is attested from the 6th century BC and is still preserved by the country's Zoroastrian communities. There are two famous writers of Iran. First, we have Ahmad Mahmud. He was a prominent Iranian novelist from Avast city in the southwest of Iran. One of his works is The Neighbors. Stand out as one of the most notable novels in the modern Persian literature. He was known as a distinguished social realist writer by his works mainly concerning the lives of working class and lower class families in the urban city of his place. The next author is Ali Muhammad Afghani. Veteran contemporary writer Ali Muhammad Afghani was born in 1925 in Kermanshah, Iran. Afghani wrote his masterpiece Madame Aoust's Husband while in prison, and he himself published his masterpiece in 1961 because no publisher accepted to publish such a long novel written by a known writer. But later on, he was admired by different literary figures during his time. Next is Literature of Mongolia. Mongol literature has been greatly influenced by its nomadic oral traditions, the three peaks of Mongol literature. First is The Secret History of Mongols. Next, Epic of King Caesar and Epic of Jagar. The first one is The Secret History of the Mongols. It is the oldest surviving literature work in the Mongolian language. It was written for the Mongol royal family from time after the 1227 death of Genghis Khan, also known as Temujin. The author is anonymous and probably originally wrote in the Mongolian script, but the surviving texts all derive from the transcriptions or translations into Chinese character that date from the end of the 14th century and were compiled by the Ming Dynasty under the title The Secret History of the Yuan Dynasty. Second is the Epic of King Caesar. Is an epic cycle of Tibet and Greater Central Asia, believed to date from the 12th century, that refers to the heroic deeds of the century hero Caesar, the fearless lord of the legendary kingdom of Ling. It is recorded variously in the poetry and prose through oral poetry performance. It is sung widely throughout Central Asia and northeast of Southeast Asia. Tibetan, Mongolian, Buryat, Balti, Ladakhi, and the Mongol singers maintain the oral tradition, and the epic has attracted intense scholarly curiosity as one of the few oral epic traditions to survive as a performing art. The last country under the Middle East Asian literature is the Palestine. Palestinian literature refers to the Arabic language, novel, short stories, and poems produced by Palestinians. Ghassan Kanafani was a Palestinian author and a leading member of the Popular Front for the Librarian of Palestine. The two famous works of Ghazan was Men in the Sun in 1962 and All That's Left for You in 1966. Men in the Sun was published to great critical acclaim. Rashid Khalidi considers it prescient. The story is an allegory of Palestinian calamity in the wake of the Nakba in its description of the defeatist despair, passivity, and political corruption infesting the lives of Palestinians in refugee camps. The next one is The All That's Left for You in 1966, is a set in a refugee camp in the Gaza Strip. It deals with the woman Mariam and her brother Hamid both orphaned in the 1948 war, their father dying in a combat, his last words being demand that they abstain from marriage until the national cause has been won. This story won the Lebanese Literary Prize in that year. And that concludes our video for today about the Middle East Asian literature. I hope you've learned something from this vlog. Again, this is Charlie Metzena. Thank you and have a good day.
That